This is Learning to Dad
I'm the cool dad. That's my thing.
with Tyler Ross.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills.
I'm gonna have fun, and you're gonna have fun.
Or however you wanted, we'll just flow through it. But we're recording. Jevon Wooden, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing well, Tyler. I appreciate you having me.
No, I'm excited to talk to you. We're recording, though this is going to be released much later, but recording day after Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you. This is your first Father's Day. Yeah, you've got a baby girl. How old is she?
7 months. Time is flying, but she's 7 months. And it's been a joy. Enjoy that first Father's Day for sure.
So what surprised you the most?
What didn't is the question, Tyler. I mean, man, it's like every day she's doing something different. She learns so quickly, so observant. She's teaching me so many lessons, leadership lessons, business lessons, life lessons. And I think what surprised me most is, they have their temperament early. Like, it's not like you can kind of tell what their personality is at this young stage.
Yeah, it's wild how they, kind of tip their hand early, and you get a pretty good idea what this kid could be like down the road for sure. So, all right, Jevon, you've got a brief little summary of, your professional experience. Let's see, you're a speaker, coach, author. You specialize in empathetic leadership, which I look forward to understanding. A veteran CEO, emotional intelligence, and DISC expert. You help build teams and workplace cultures, and it sounds like some advising on sustainable business growth. And you've been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, Inc. magazine, among other things. So that's a lot going on for such a young guy, and I'm excited to dig into some of this stuff. So is that the way you would, get caught in an elevator with you and go, hey, what do you do for a living? Like, is that what you'd say, all that?
Yeah, I mean, to summarize it up, I inject empathy in the workplace culture, and I help businesses grow. So that's how I always summarize it, man. But as far as, who I am, I lead with the father, the husband, and just someone who is passionate about making this world a better place, and leaving it better than I left it as my legacy.
I wouldn't know what else we're doing here, Like, if somebody asked me what's the point of life, the only thing I can think of that makes perfect sense is to just leave it better than you found it, and make that your contribution to humanity as a whole. Where are you doing this from? Are you in Chicago, or are you just visiting Chicago?
No, I was just visiting Chicago. We just went there for the weekend. We had a friend who had a baby shower. So very, very in line with the theme, right? We had a friend who had a baby shower up there. So we went up there and decided to, my wife decided to celebrate Father's Day up there. But originally out of Houston, Texas.
Yeah, is that where you're calling me from now, or where I'm calling you from?
Yes, sir. Houston, Texas is where I call home now. Originally from Rochester, New York, though.
Oh, right on. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
What about yourself? Where are you located?
I'm about 45 minutes outside of D.C. in what used to be a little town called Warrenton. Back in the early 90s, mid-90s. Yeah, it used to be. In the mid-90s, about when we became more populous with people than cows. But up until then, there was nothing but cows and farmers.
That's awesome. Yeah, I used to live in D.C. actually. That's where I moved here from about 4 years ago. Yeah.
Like actually in the district itself?
Well, right outside, Largo, Maryland. So about 15 minutes outside of D.C.
Okay, right on. What inspired the move to Texas?
I actually moved on Thanksgiving of 2020. That was COVID, and it was a time to reevaluate. And one of the things I reevaluated was why I was paying such high prices when I can get a lot more bang for my bucks elsewhere. So, just quality of life, being able to do what I really aspire to do, being able to spend, my money on things that matter, like travel and experiences and memories. That's really what inspired the move.
That's great. And what did you shift career paths at that time?
No, not really. I've always, worked remotely, so I can work from anywhere, and it just made sense to move somewhere. One, no income taxes. Being a veteran, also a disabled vet, they treat veterans very well here at the VA in Houston. So just had to figure out what made the most sense in this next chapter in life.
Would you share with me, with anyone listening, kind of a brief history of your military experience and why you're not doing that anymore?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I was in the Army. I was actually a reservist for about 8 years and did 4 years active duty. So I was in the Army, deployed 3 times, and after that last deployment to Afghanistan, that was in 2016, 2017. I just, my mind, my body, my emotions just wasn't in check, right? So I just was like, yeah, I don't know if I could do this anymore. There has to be more to it. So I was in the tech field at the time. And I was like, tech pays the bills, cybersecurity specifically, pays the bills, but it didn't feed my soul. I was still searching for what my purpose was. And in the military, if you lose that purpose, it can be dangerous. And I found myself when I got back from that deployment about 5-6 months later, I went through severe depression and PTSD. Some things happened during deployment as typical for the Army or any service member. And, it was tough for me to get back into that normal routine of everyday civilian life. So I had to do some soul searching. So that was my first introduction to therapy on my side. I was a coach for a while at that time. I used to coach soldiers on base to kind of learn how to be a successful coach. But I ended up having to get my own coach to work me through some of the things I didn't even know were traumatic, some things that I didn't even know were still sitting on my heart and my mind because they were there subconsciously. So once I got over that, it took me about a year. I kicked back up into this coaching world, and that's how I knew that this was really where I needed to be. Because what I went through, I apply now today to help my clients, get over some of those limiting beliefs, get over some of those adverse thoughts, and then some of those blocks that we don't even necessarily know are there that really hinder us from moving forward towards the path and the person we want to be. So that's really it in a nutshell, man. That's what made me get out of the military. I knew I wasn't serving at the level I wanted to serve in that capacity. I no longer had soldiers under me, which was really what I enjoyed the most. So it was just time to move.
So I've got a lot of friends that have done, military service, special ops guys, cops that have been undercover that have had difficulty transitioning into just kind of a typical day-to-day civilian life, the life that you guys are protecting and preserving for us. Is there advice that you would offer to anybody that just came back off deployment or is retiring to kind of like help them be self-aware of any mental impacts that may have been resulted from their deployment and how to approach that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And thanks for that question. I would say there's this concept I talk about. It's called the 360-degree support system. So I like my folks to, one, it starts at the zero. The military folks, you're very familiar with this. That 0 meters is you, right? You're the center of this whole circle. You have to be willing to be vulnerable to let people know that you need that support. And then you have that 25 meters outside of you. That's like your close friends, those people you don't mind sharing some of the deepest, darkest feelings and thoughts. So make sure you're sharing that with them. You don't have to start big. You can start small with something, just letting them know that something just isn't quite right. You need support in some way, shape, or form. And you can tell them how that support looks, right? Whether you want advice or you just want a listening ear. Then at second level, I always recommend having someone who is unbiased. That could be your therapist, a coach, psychiatrist, whoever you feel would be there to provide you the things you absolutely need to hear. That they just say, they're not going to give you that, yeah, you can do it. They're going to say, what part can you play in this? What is your accountability piece that you're missing? Things like that. So you got to have that level as well. And then that third level is, it could be what I call your virtual mentor, someone who's aspirational. You see some of the things that they do, and you're like, how can I apply that to my own situations and circumstances? That's important to have that as well. Napoleon Hill, he talked about that table, right? He had a whole conversation with folks who were dead, right? They were dead people, but they did some amazing things, and it kind of inspired him to do what he was doing. We can do the same thing. It doesn't have to be someone we know that's inspiring us. It can be someone we read about. We learn their story, and you're like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. One of mine is Viktor Frankl. He went through a whole concentration camp in Nazi Germany. Pretty much his whole family was killed, but he still had the compassion to say, I feel sorry for the German soldiers who had to carry out those executions. I felt sorry. I can only imagine how it felt for them to have to do that day in and day out. Right? So if he can look that way and serve with compassion and empathy for people who actually, really tried to, commit genocide on his people and killed most of his family, then why can't I? So that's some of the things that I would tell my fellow service members who are struggling. The other thing is to find something you love. Right? So find something you love that can kind of take you away from those negative thoughts. That could be some type of hobby. Maybe it's working out, fitness. Maybe it's travel, making experiences. And then have something that you can look at or close your eyes and see that kind of gets you in that right frame of mind once again. That could be tough because in the midst of the chaos internally, that's one of the hardest battles we can fight. The third thing I would say is, when you do feel these feelings, don't push them to the side. Acknowledge that they're there. And then really process what's happening, what's going on. And try to dispel it. So if you're saying, my family would be better off without me, for instance, ask, is that true? And why it's true? And then try to, dispel that theory by thinking of what's actually going on. So for me, during my time of, my depression, and when I said that, I said, that's not right. They never told me that. They never told me I was a burden. When I went to them, they actually were very receptive of what I was saying, and they gave me the license to go get help, and they were checking on me, and I felt good. And then also, I was actually contributing to the family in some way, shape, or form. I was able to support them when they needed. So you got to really think about what's true and really combat those thoughts that you're having. And then the fourth thing is find a purpose. What's your new purpose in life? What do you enjoy doing? There's a concept from Japan that I like. It's called ikigai, finding your reason for being. And for soldiers and people and first responders, that can be tough when you're out of that situation because you knew that your reason for being was helping people, fighting for freedom, etc. So how can you do that now when you're in a different way? It could be volunteering for an organization, signing up to work with a nonprofit. It could be donating. Just find a way that you can do that in your own way.
God, Jevon, what a beautiful answer. You touched on so many things. I can't imagine a more thorough answer on that. I think a couple of things that jumped out at me that you were saying is asking for the particular type of help that you want. I think is a great step. So many people, just get help and they don't ask for the kind that they want that actually supports them. That's a really cool thing to point out. Napoleon Hill, so many people think of Think and Grow Rich as that book, but I think my favorite one was what's it called, Power of a Positive Mental Mindset or Attitude. I thought that was a better book.
Yeah, you have that one. Yeah, I actually like that one and Outwitting the Devil.
I have not read that one. I'll have to look that out. Outwitting the Devil.
Check it out.
I'm going to write that down. But then, so we talked about like what somebody could ask for, but let's say we have friends that we know need help but aren't self-aware enough to ask for it. What's something that like somebody on the outside looking in could approach, you when you got back or a peer of yours when they get back and they need the help but don't realize it yet? How could they be of service to that person?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things is paying attention to patterns. Right? If you know that their behavioral patterns are a certain way and you notice something's a little off, ask them. Just sometimes, you can say, hey, are you good? Right? I noticed this. I noticed this. And if you start paying attention, they may not even know that they're doing it. But if you bring a spotlight to it, you can just ask them, right, are they good? And if they say, yeah, I'm good, you can just say, all right, cool. So tell me what's going on lately. What's been happening? How you feeling? Right? Just keep probing, not where it's super aggressive, but passively just asking them questions to see what's happening to them. And if they're giving you those short answers, you be like, you give something that's going on in your life, so they can feel like they're like, okay, if you're opening up, maybe I can open up a little bit too. Right? Sometimes the mirroring technique is the best thing we can do. Where if you're asking them something, if you give a little bit to them, they'll be more receptive and more willing to share. I think that's one of the most powerful things that we can do. And then just checking in. If you notice something's up, check in on them. Just give them a call like, hey, you were on my mind. I wanted to see if you wanted to do X thing, or I wanted to see what you had planned today. I'm just seeing what's going on, what's their routine. Just pay attention to those signs, because they're giving away stuff, or they're usually a lively person and they're not doing that right now, or maybe they're saying different language. Like, see what's happening, and then ask them who they're if they're seeing anyone for it. Like, hey, you seem a little down. Are you talking to anyone for it? Just keep probing, keep saying that, and they may feel defensive at first, but again, if you share a little bit about what you're going through and what you're doing, then they'll kind of feel like, okay, I'm not being judged, I'm not being, looked at in a different way, etc. So that's what I would say do, because the biggest part is allowing them and telling them that it's okay to not be okay, and then it's also a great thing to get help and be proactive about your health.
That's awesome. It's clear to me through listening to you speak that if you weren't naturally empathetic, you've done a lot of work and gotten a lot of help in cultivating that empathy within yourself to be of service to others in that way, which is a good transition into asking you about empathetic leadership from a business perspective and what you're doing for a living. Could you kind of dive into what is empathetic leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about empathy in its truest sense, in its Merriam-Webster definition form, it's really being able to put yourself in other people's positions, and not treating them how you want to be treated, but treating them how they want to be treated. And to do that, instead of talking a lot, we actually ask a lot of questions, and we pay attention to those patterns that I was talking about before, and having those conversations. When you think about a leader. A lot of leaders focus on that professional side. What can you do for this business? And that's a miss. If you know nothing about your people, how do you know what motivates them? How do you know why they're there in the first place? What drives them to wake up every day to come to work? You don't know how many people if they have kids or any of this stuff. So you can't be an effective leader, because if you're just giving someone tasks day in and day out and you're just expecting them to perform, that's not leadership, right? That's just managing at that point. It's a process, right? You give them something, you expect the output. A true leader is someone who influences and who supports and provides, the right resources to that person. So empathetic leadership is really taking that to the next level to say, be proactive, that word again. Be proactive about making sure that they have the resources they need to feel heard, seen, and valued. Because when you have that, you get more engaged employees, your retention is higher for that employee, and their productivity just goes through the roof. And you think about, from the military standpoint, morale. We struggled with morale for a long time because it was more of a do it, and I don't care what you're going through or what you need to do it, just get it done type of mentality. The military found out the hard way, with suicide being the number one cause of death for a long time, that they needed to change that and really start investing in the well-being and wellness of their people. When you do that, when you take care of the lifeline, your bottom line will be positively impacted.
So what are the types of businesses or industries that you find you are working with most often? Like, what size are these companies, and is there a particular niche industry that has been drawing you towards it?
Yeah, so size, we are really size agnostic. It's usually about 50 people or more, because they need to have enough people to kind of build that culture amongst their organizations. But, excuse me, as far as industries, the industries right now that I've been working with a lot are industries that are not known to be empathetic or emotionally intelligent, like tech. Tech is a very analytical, very technologically focused industry. They just want to get the job done, innovate, and create things. They don't really care about who's doing it and why. So that's starting to hurt them. We're seeing a lot of layoffs in tech. We're seeing whole teams get wiped out. So what we needed to do was take a step back and say, okay, how can we make it where we're not over hiring and bringing people on and then just disrupting their lives completely? And then if we do need to lay off, how can we make sure we're not doing it over Zoom, just telling people like, hey, starting today, you have time to do whatever you want because you're fired. Right? That's not the way to do it. So we work a lot with building that culture and training the leaders, right? To say, if I was in this person's shoes, I wouldn't want that. So what can I do? And how do I get the feedback from them to see what they want? That feedback is one of the most important pieces on being an empathetic leader and empathetic culture. Listening to your people, not just assuming, right? Not making changes in a vacuum, but getting their input. That's going to take you a long way. Tech, hospitality, construction is a huge one. Right now, construction has the leading number of suicides across industries. So construction is really working on the empathy because if you think about it, their culture is similar to the military was 5-10 years ago. They're really about, hey, I don't care what's going on in your personal life, drop it at the door and get it done. Right? So we cannot operate like that. We have to remember that everyone that's doing these jobs are humans and we go through things, we feel different, we have off days, right? And we need to be able to pay attention to that. And like I said, be proactive. Not being proactive by just throwing some benefits that are useless at people, but really seeing how you can best support them. You're seeing a lot of companies, they're offering these, employee assistance programs, but with that, they have coaching they're offering, they have, free therapy sessions, they have well-being at the gym, they pay for your gym memberships, etc. So as the person, we need to look into that. How can they support me and how can I use that to make sure I'm the best person I can be and best version of myself, not just for the job, but for my family, my friends, and for myself.
So I could see how layoffs could be a major impact to company culture. First, when you get laid off, as somebody that's not being laid off, you have this sense of relief that you still have your job, but also working in fear that maybe you are next. What are some of the other, catalysts for a need to improve culture? What are some of the key components of culture to make sure that you as a leader maintain a positive culture in your work environment?
Absolutely. So one of the first things is psychological safety. You hit on it when you said like you don't feel safe. You feel like you could be next type of thing. Like creating a culture of psychological safety. And to do that, as leaders, you have to be very transparent about what's going on. A lot of leaders, we see it in cultures, like they don't tell people what's going on and what's sparking those layoffs. Like, oh, we're getting impacted by X part of the economy. Maybe our this quarter, for the last couple of quarters, we haven't hit our numbers. So we just not generating the income, whatever. Be transparent about what's going on and the way you plan on activating that thing. Letting people know like, hey, it could be possible that we have another round of layoffs. To help you, we're going to do resume reviews for you just in case. All right, we're going to make sure that you have, that therapist or whoever that you can go and call and get some sessions just in case you're having adverse reactions to everything. Just making sure you provide those resources so they feel supported. And if you know that a team is being laid off, give them time. Right? Give them time to go ahead and get that next job. Or when you provide that severance package, make sure it's a few months so they can actually support their families and not just have, no health insurance and all these things. There's a lot of things we can do to do it right. And a lot of companies just get it wrong when they're doing layoffs. Layoffs is a part of business. We know that. But to do it right, you have to be transparent. You have to give them the support. Think about how much time they may need as far as the severance package goes. What does that severance package look like? What does it include so they can keep operating on a daily basis as they find the next role? How can you help them find the next role? Just things like that. It's really simple, but companies make it hard. And then as far as the internal culture is involved, you really want to make sure that you have, especially in the remote world, right, where we're having geographically dispersed teams, how do we make it so people don't feel like they're just joining? And one of the things is, instead of just having team meetings that we just talk about the business, I like to have engaging team meetings and let different people lead it so they can kind of show you their different style, their learning styles. Make sure, speaking of that, you're really talking to each type of personality. That's why I kind of got certified in this, because I wanted to know how those personalities change when they interact with others. So if you have a team where some people are outgoing, some people are more introverted and they don't say much, make sure you're kind of feeding into both of them, giving time to process the thoughts. Gamifying this stuff is a great way to get everybody involved and allowing them to use the chat, right? If they're not some person that's like to be talkative, let them answer in the chat. Let them tell you their thoughts in the chat. Or have it where, hey, I know some people don't want to, talk right now, or you need to think about it. Send me your answer by tomorrow, so I can kind of put that in, in our thoughts as we go through this process, etc. You just want to make sure you're considering all people, because culture, by definition, is the beliefs, the thoughts, and actions of a particular group. To create a great organizational culture, it has to be inclusive of everybody that makes up that group.
That all makes so much sense, and it's funny to think that this should be like this intuitive thing, but sometimes we get lost in the weeds and we don't think about that stuff. Like if I'm at a company and the guy next to me gets fired, and he's got a good severance package, he's getting support from the company to transition into another job, like I feel a hell of a lot better about working for the company now, and I'm not as scared because I know that they're going to take care of me. So that's really stuff that makes perfect sense, but not always obvious. How's all this?
Yeah, and if you think about it, that helps those people who, even if I'm sorry, you had blanked out. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jevon. A little bit of a delay, so we might step on each other's talking a little.
Yeah, no worries. I was just saying one more point to that is, if you think about this, one of the parts, I'll talk about a 5 why framework, and the last one is yearn, right? Getting people to evangelize your brand as a company and as a person. And to do that, if you treat someone well, when you do lay them off, they're still going to be saying how great of an organization you were, how you handled it, how you made them, like, even though they were getting laid off, you made it easy for them to transition, right? And those people that are internal are going to be like, man, this company, I'm so glad I work for them, because even something as tough as a layoff, right, they handle it with grace and transparency. They let us know every step of the way what was going on. And that just bodes well for you long term. We got to stop this short-term thinking, or this is a short-term response. Layoffs should be the last thing we think about as an organization, but when we have to do that, we got to remember that everyone we're doing it with are people and they're humans.
So with all this coaching that you've participated in, coaching you've been as a coach, all the empathy work and personality work that you've come to learn and understand, how has that evolved your personal relationships, whether it be with friends or your wife? How have you changed as a result of all this work you've done?
Absolutely. So I used to be, military and growing up in a really harsh environment in Rochester, New York. I used to not understand emotional intelligence and empathy. I'm just like, why? I'm a D and I for people who want to understand this. So I'm dominant and I'm an influencer. So really, I'm very assertive person. I just want to get it done, whatever that looks like. So for me, I had to understand those other folks who are more like, they need more information to do things. They want to know the rationale behind things. They want to know like all the details. I had to understand, because I used to get frustrated with them. So I'm like, why do you need all of this? So for me, it was more about like listening and figuring out what it was and how I could best serve them with the information that I needed to get things done. And what can I learn from them? Because oftentimes we forget that we're learning things from other people. So I had to be very open, this concept of openness and vulnerability. My way is not always the best way. So that's where getting different people's perspectives has really served me well on this coaching journey. So to do that, I ask a lot of questions now. right? I don't talk as much, so I like the 80-20 rule. I'm listening 80% and then talking maybe 20%. And a lot of what I'm talking about is asking those clarifying questions so I can get more insight, so that when I do have to make that decision, I'm making it not from my own thoughts and perspectives, but I've considered a lot of different points and perspectives that I wouldn't have otherwise seen. And then also empowering others to make decisions. I may not be the one that has to make the choice. So empowering others is something that has been huge. Giving people the autonomy to say, you know, I'm going to do this project this way, and I'm in charge. I can make the final say. I may run it by Jevon, right, because he is, you know, he's on the line too, his reputation and stuff, because he's the overarching thought. But he has given me the power to speak for him, so to speak, and so I can say what I feel. So I think that's what I've learned the most is, you know, as a leader, leaders should be cultivating other leaders. And to do that, we have to kind of delegate our power and empower other people to step into those roles, right? And that's really the only way they're going to develop the confidence to take that next step in the professional world.
And do you expect that all of this will serve you as a parent moving forward?
Definitely. You know, one of the things that I have, one of my my plights for parenthood is I like to kind of, if she's falling, right, I want to catch her. If she's, you know, crying, I want to get her immediately. But being able to take like just a couple seconds or a minute to let her figure things out has been the hardest thing for me. And that's what I'm learning as a dad, right? I don't have to catch her all the time, because now if she's falling, she's probably falling to start wanting to crawl, right? So I have to learn that as a parent, like, you know, she's going to take her own actions, and I need to give her the autonomy to grow into the person that she can be. So I definitely feel like this is going to serve me well. And also, as she ages, she may ask me a ton of questions that I don't necessarily need to have the answer to. I can really put it back on her and say, what do you think about it? All right, what are your thoughts? So those types of things, letting her know that it's okay to have her own perspective and to think through things herself, are going to be tremendous in her growth.
How has, you know, you've got a 7-month-old child, and how have the last 7 months impacted your professional life and your work-home life balance? Like, what's changed over the last 7 months?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I work from home, and when I think like her first 4 months, she was home with me. Now, that was the toughest adjustment because she needed a lot, right, being a newborn. So I would just have to make sure that my work was aligned with that. So if I had a meeting and she was right there with me, I would say, hey, I have my newborn next to me. She may start crying, right? I may have to step away for a bit. I feel like COVID helped in that, because now a lot of people understand that, you know, there's a lot of home things going on while we're working. And if you put that up front, just what we call in the military bottom line up front, I like to preface it with that. That way people expect it, they understand it, they're not surprised by it. Or I may have to stop a meeting early and go get her because maybe she fell ill at the daycare now that she's there. So that's really how it's changed. And then maybe my hours, when I could work straight through the day like I like, you know, now I have to make sure I take breaks and make time for my family, and then maybe get back to it later. So it's not just a linear path anymore. So now it's more like, hey, pause, stop, do this, do that, right? Get back to it. So that's how it has changed for me. It's more of, you know, it's not just, hey, put your head down and get it. I might have to have my phone on my ringer, right, when I didn't used to do. I may have to pay attention to those notifications because it may be about my child. So it just changed my flow on a daily basis, but it also motivates me a little more. Those days where I just don't feel like I have it, I just look over to my daughter and my wife and say, you know what? You know, this is greater than me. So they are adding to my why, and I just feel like I'm more powerful now.
So I've got a friend named Mariah Stockman who does a podcast called Made for Moms, and she does more or less what I do, talks about being a mom and being a professional and balancing those things, where I'm more on the dad side. But a conversation that she has with so many people is, you know, how does having that kid with you impact your relationship with your clients, because sometimes, you know, as it's more commonly as men, we don't even talk about being dads or having a kid that we're taking care of, and she has to have a lot of conversations, or she just does it and it's in her mind where, like, hey, I got to cut this video call short because I got to go take care of my kid, and that has some sort of impact with your client relationship. So have you found that most of your clients, in the event that you have to prioritize your family over their business, are empathetic to you and understanding and cool with it? Or have you found a client going, you know what, Jevon's not giving me enough attention because he's in love with this little baby?
Now, I've actually found that it endeared me to them because most of my clients understand it, right? They're married, and even if they don't have kids, they talk about, you know, what a kid entails. They still understand that, right? Because they may be an aunt and uncle. They were a child themselves, and, you know, they get it, right? So I feel like nowadays a lot of people understand that as long as you're getting what needs to be done, right? And that's the key. I don't say, even if I cut it short, I don't say, you know what, I can't do what I promised you that you're paying me for because I have this child, so I have to just stop working completely. I'll say, you know what, I can't do it right now, but, you know, I'll make sure that let's touch base later and we can reschedule a meeting. Or, hey, you know, maybe we can't have this coaching call completed today, but let's try it for tomorrow. You know, and they understand it and they're receptive to that. So I feel like as long as you're open and you're telling them what's going on, they'll be okay with it. Again, I feel like even if people don't really know that they're being empathetic, most people want to understand it. They'll give you that space. So just being open to them it really allows them to feel like, you know, feel comfortable with me, understand that I'm going to get it done in some way, shape, or form. I'm not using it as a cop-out, right? I'm really telling them what's going on and that, you know, it's not going to impact our working relationship.
Like as humans, we evolve. You know, I'm not the same person when I was 15, neither are you. Or when we were 20, we were different. 25, we were different. Just as human beings, we had different values, different things that interested us, different roles in life, different missions. I would say the same thing about being a dad. Dad to a 7-month-old is different than a 7-year-old, different than 17, 27, and so on. Like, how would you describe what your role is now in this period of life with a 7-month-old child? Like, what's your role as a dad right now?
Absolutely. I feel like my role really is to provide love to this child, right? And that love shows up as making sure she's fed, making sure her diaper is changed, making sure I hold her and she knows that I am there for her, allowing her space to grow, spending that quality time, even if it's only 30 minutes, right? Spending that, making sure that 30 minutes I'm not on my phone. Right? I'm really focused on her so she knows that she is important to me, and just making sure that she's protected, right? Protected and provided for. I think that that's my role as a father. You know, she's not asking me questions yet. She's not able to talk, but I know that she still understands what's going on. So I still have to give her those things so that I'm not foreign to her as she grows up.
All right, Jevon, as we get to near the end of this, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions, okay?
Let's do it, man.
All right. We're going to design a super dad, right? What are 2 or 3 characteristics that every super dad needs to have?
Yes. So I love this question, actually. So one question is patience. One answer is patience. Definitely have to be patient. 2 is curiosity, right? Not feeling like he knows all of the answers, has all the right things, but learning as he goes, understanding that even if you had a thought of what your child would be or could be, you have to allow them to grow into that person themselves. And then the third thing is being able to, being open, right? Being understanding that things happen rapidly and you only have a certain finite amount of things that you can control. So those things that you can't control, just be open to them and see what action you need to take. What's your best next action? And that'll relieve a lot of stress as a dad.
What is a skill that you're really excited to teach your daughter as she grows up?
Empathy. I look at empathy as a skill, and I'm really excited to teach her how to make sure she's treating people how they wanted to be treated.
Awesome. If time, money, and space were of no consequence, that you can conjure any answer to this that you wanted to, and you were to give a gift to every father in the world, what is a gift that you would bestow upon every dad out there?
If I could give a gift to every dad out there, I would give them a space to share their deepest, darkest feelings. I feel
That's
like we
awesome.
need that right now.
I just got goosebumps. That's awesome.
Thank you.
When in your life do you feel the most love?
I feel the most love when I'm with my wife and my daughter. That's it, man. And my dog. When they're all huddled up around me and they're not giving me the space to move, I feel the most love at that time, man.
That's well expressed. That might be my answer too. I like that when you can't move, when they're just piled on you
Yeah,
and you can't move.
yeah. Just give me so much love, right?
Yeah. So before I ask you the last question, uh, what? Actually, I'm going to ask you one more question. Is there a dad out there that you always admired, whether it was a fictional character, a TV character, somebody in your life that was a great male role model? Who's the person that you think of?
Mine would be Barack Obama. I mean, he had the greatest role at being the president, but he still found time. You know, you always see him taking his daughters to a basketball game or going with them on campus for college tours. You just always saw him making time for his daughters and his wife. And I feel like if he can do it, if he can make time, then, you know, we all should be able to make time because he could have easily had staff do those things, but he didn't.
That's a fair point. Okay, so Jevon, before we wrap, one more question after this, but where can listeners find you? Website, social media, LinkedIn, all the rest?
Yeah, absolutely. So LinkedIn is my favorite platform. Just search Jevon Wooden, and you'll see a light bulb next to my name. Go ahead and connect with me there, and make sure you send me a DM. Tell me you listen to me on Tyler's podcast. And you can also go to my website, jevonwooden.com.
All right, we'll make sure that we link all that stuff into the show notes as well. And your final question, should this recording last forever so that your daughter can hear it, maybe your daughter's grandchildren and their kids hear it, what's a message for your lineage of Woodens, generations down the road? What's something you hope to share with them?
Oh, this is a powerful question, Tyler. Oh, I love this. Thank you for giving me space to answer. What I would say to my daughter and the Woodens down the road would be that remember that any adversity you're going through is temporary. You have everything you need to overcome, but you have to make room for the assistance and love from others to do it. Success is not a lonely journey, and it's not something that we can do alone, whatever your definition of that is. We have to make room to connect with others on a deeper level than just the surface. And we also have to make room to share that we need help so that we can be loved and supported and valued by other people. And when you do that, you will be a better person than even you imagine that you can be.
Thank you, Jevon.
Thank you.